Le damos por favor un aplauso a la señorita Deborah Navarro. If you want to come over, join us. Just make sure you're not shy, right? You feel good? You feel like at home?
Great.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
See you.
I'm going to hug you too. All right, I'm going to sit here. You're going to sit here. I'm going to sit there.
Awesome.
All right? You good?
Great.
Amazing. Let me see if people are scanning the QR. Who's not going to use the live translation? Who is not going to use the live translation? All right, so we do understand each other. All right, good. Deborah, do I say Deborah? Can I say Deb? Or
Deb.
Deb?
Deb or Deborah.
All right, Deb, thank you for coming. It's nice to have you here. I'm going to look at you sometimes, and sometimes I'm going to look at the crowd. You can look at me. Sometimes you can look at the crowd. The camera is right in front. The camera is actually right in front there. You know, I was talking to you and about the agenda, and I was telling you that today we have the disruptive and international speakers we invited, and tomorrow we have a lot of other cool crowd. Are you excited to be here? Is it your first time? How do you feel?
I'm excited to be here. It's my first time in Colombia, and we may go to Medellin this weekend, and I want to check out the Amazon.
Did you say Medellin?
Medellin.
And Amazon?
Maybe the Amazon.
Maybe. That would be amazing.
Now or next time.
All
But
right.
I think it's important to connect with nature, given that, you know, our world and our climate is, you know, in danger. And we have a duty to protect our planet, and I feel that it is my own duty to do work to help protect our environment.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a question about this climate change situation. Is it backed by data? Are the situation really bad, or is it maybe the media scaring us too much? What's the situation?
I think there is a lot of data. With data, though, you can interpret it in any way that you would like. So I think when it comes to climate change, what guides me is just observing the world that I know today and how it seems different or how it seems out of equilibrium of what is sustainable for us to live in this world 100 years from now and have our children, you know, be able to breathe healthy air, drink clean water. And from what I've witnessed with all the climate catastrophes that keep happening, with what I've witnessed in observing the news and seeing people in developing countries die due to heat waves and have shortages, and what I experience every day in America, eating food that has diminished nutritional value from decades of plowing the land in a way that doesn't enrich it, unlike what we learned from unlike like indigenous practices of farming. So there's so much collectively that tells me that we have a lot of work to do.
All right. You mentioned food, and you mentioned the fact that in the U.S. it's not tasting the same was good.
No.
Have you had time to try any
Yes.
local food in Colombia? Do you feel like it tastes the same?
It tastes so much better.
Yeah?
Same in, yes, so the maíz and I had like arepas and empanadas. And the quality of the vegetables here is richer, you know, because so much is just this capitalistic world in which everything is so profit-driven has carried on to the way that we nourish ourselves, which, you know, is a shame. That shouldn't be something that we optimize the way that we optimize other things like products and machinery.
All right, interesting. Before we get into more of very interesting stuff you are into, and I'm very excited. Let's get back to understanding you and knowing you better, where you come from. I'd love to know more because it feels like maybe your past is impacting your interest in those situations, climate change and new dangers we are in. So tell us a bit about who's Deb.
Yes. So my upbringing was, I live in a major city today. I live in New York, which, it's millions and millions of people. And you can experience anything you want there. But I'm from a really small town of 3,000 people near Mexico and in the border. And I never left the country until I went to college. I never left the state. And my entire life was in this small bubble, and I had to really imagine what the world was like outside of my existence. And it was hard, I didn't have access to like internet or access to many resources, but the one thing it gave me is a lot of space and boredom, which allowed me to have creativity and instilled a lot of curiosity in me. And through this, I fell in love with science and so many other things.
Amazing. I'm double checking the live translation. I'm actually surprised. It's not bad at all. Me enamoré de las ciencias, entre otras cosas. Amazing. It's pretty good. I'm excited about this thing. I'll keep talking to the AI.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think so? You mentioned that you were raised in a small town, and this developed your creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the fact that today we are hyper connected all day in front of content, screens, do you think this affect our, at least for the new generation, ability to think, create? Or
Completely.
Yeah, really?
Yes. What's happening today is our attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And through this, I'm sure you all are familiar when some of the most creative times I've ever been in, I'm entering a state of flow where I separate from all of the noise that's around me. And in a place that's very slow and quiet, like where I'm from, that comes a little bit more naturally. At least when I was there. Now everyone's on the internet, so it's probably the same issue, no matter where you live now. But, all of these distractions really stop us from diving deep into like what's out there and having those unique insights and ideas and inspiration that I think it really takes to separate ourselves, or I should speak for myself, like separate myself from everything else. There have been times where I just want to unwind and all the notifications and the emails.
Mm-hmm. So do you have a way in your day-to-day, do you have a way to focus? Because it looks like we're going to keep using tech,
Yeah,
because it brings a lot of other opportunities.
One thing that I've been doing that has been awesome that I need to get better at is I go through time blocks. Start my morning with meditation, with some writing, kind of like get it all out of the stuff that's, in my mind, bothering me, just getting it out. And also things that are exciting me, set the tone of the day. And then the most important thing is like blocking off like 4 hours. And I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and just try just not to look at my phone that whole time and just work. And then do that like 2 times a day, hopefully eventually 3 times a day maybe, where I'm just like completely into the task that I'm doing.
Amazing. I have a tip for you. You might know it
Okay.
already. There is a new cool app called the Minimalist Phone.
Oh, no, I
And when
haven't.
you download it, it completely changes the software, the UX, and it's all black and just limits to the things you really need, and you really have to work hard to get to something. So it helps you really get into the dark actually, and it's a pretty interesting app. You could try it. It's
Cool.
really radical. Then you won't be able to see much. You won't see any pictures of the conference today. All right. That's interesting to have this view of things from someone that is living in the US, working in this, I'm going to say, tech innovation world, and you live in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the hyper tech, hyper speed, hyper everything. So it's interesting that you have this view. what's the other side? What do you like about the world we live in and the tech and all what's happening?
I think what I like is, technology, when done well, is pretty much like magic. Yeah. Think about cell phones. My grandmother told me there was this woman, where I'm from is almost like a village, honestly, more than it is, closer to being a village than it is to be a city. And there was like, 100 years ago, this woman who, a family friend said, one day we're going to be able to see each other. We're going to be able to have our cell phones and be able to see each other. And that sort of idea when, like, say, my mom was a kid seemed really out there. And I think that kind of sums up what's beautiful in a significant way about technology is, like, imagine the kind of world we live today is like magic to people from the past, you know? The way that we transport, the way that we move, the way that we communicate, the way that we can, beam this conversation out to the entire world.
For people from the past or for people from today but who lives in a different realities in Amazonas maybe or in parts of Africa, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, that's interesting. So you're in both worlds. You're trying to take care of yourself and make sure you keep having a healthy mental state, but you're also really into tech and innovation. Tell me about interesting stuff you've been involved to in the past, maybe something you can share with us before we learn more.
Yeah, so one of the most significant efforts that one of the most significant things I've ever worked on or created was founding a company and a research group that have built a portfolio of products, but namely levitating vehicles. So
wait a minute, did you say levitating vehicles?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, interesting.
And so it's pretty, the concept is pretty cool. It's similar to like air hockey.
So it's easier than we think, the tech behind or the innovation behind?
Yeah. There's levitation technology has been around for decades, and so really it's about just optimizing it and progressing it. Similar to when we first created a car, and Henry Ford first created the car, and there was more iterations to be done. So we built out various levitating vehicles, and Elon Musk built out the infrastructure side, and so we've gone to SpaceX various times, and we've tested, and we've...
So it works?
It works, yes, it works.
Is there any companies or countries out there, or in Japan? I'm not sure.
I think Europe is great. Europe has our counterparts who we were a part of this network with. Elon Musk invited the top engineering teams from around the world, and our counterparts in Europe. Luckily, their government has donated millions of dollars to push forward this entirely new mode of transit. And so there's a lot of innovation happening in this space.
Is this related to the tunnels? Is this going to work with levitating technology, or is it a electric or different tech?
So it is an electric, and it is using tunnels. And so if you think about it today, think about in Bogotá, getting here, I was in a lot of traffic, and our roads are congested also in the United States. And, in order for us to really continue to facilitate the way we move, we need drastic innovations in transit. And fixing this real quick.
So do you think...
the one thing I'll quickly say is our transit systems are almost like the circulatory systems in our bodies. When something is clogged and you can't efficiently move, that is indicative of a huge issue, a systemic issue. And in order for us to keep progressing as a society, in order for us to be healthy, And for us to do what we need to do, transport food, transport each
Medicines
other,
and
everything,
each other.
we need to innovate in the way that we move. And so that's what really drew me, especially coming from a small town where I stayed in the same place my entire life. And I thought, what would the world be like if I had access to systems where I could just easily get from one major city to another, like Bogotá, Medellin, in 30 minutes, Like, how would that change my life? And our roads are congested, airplanes are awful for the environment, and we also, besides building vehicles, most recently started innovating in the actual tunneling. And so through innovating in the tunneling itself, you can create entirely new systems underground that don't disrupt anything, that don't cause noise pollution, that allow us to move in this way, in an effortless way.
So that'd be the ultimate solutions for congested cities like New York
Yes.
and Bogota. That's
Yes.
going underground and creating those tunnels with this levitating technology.
Yes.
I'm still mind blown by the idea. How do you learn this stuff? How do you get into that?
So I actually studied biology in college, which taught me so much about systems. And in college, I also started a research group in engineering, and I studied business. And I had read Elon Musk's white paper in 2013 just for fun, and I thought the concept was so cool, especially given that I never left my hometown. And I saw this paper that they published about how you could just go from like LA to San Francisco, New York to Boston in 30 minutes. And I thought, how cool is that? So whenever they announced a couple years later that they wanted, I was in grad school at the time, and they wanted the top engineering teams from around the world to submit designs for these levitating vehicles and to see if they worked and to test them at SpaceX. I did it for fun. No one knew that it was actually going to work.
To work? Wow.
And we learned as we go. And I think that's one of the things that so many people are always thinking, I don't have a good idea, or I don't know how to get started with business.
I can't do it, yeah.
And it's not about where you're at or where you're starting. It's about being consistent. Your idea most ideas aren't very good. Even the first design we ever made was pretty bad. But, through moving forward and progressing, there's so much that you can accomplish.
So you guys set up, a team, and you started to design?
Yeah, we would meet every day, and we would work on designs. I was a biologist at the time, or biology student, grad at the time, so I was looking at biomimicry and its effect on the design of the systems. And then I shifted to the business side because it was a bunch of smart engineers just building without interfacing with anyone. I'm like, for us to succeed, we really have to change the game. So I learned by going through that experience. It was so fun.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Nos siguen, ¿verdad? Hasta ahora nos siguen la conversación. Sí, wow. Yeah, you just made me feel absolutely mediocre in this world right now. So do you think today anyone, with just a internet connection, anyone in Colombia from everywhere could actually get into this kind of fields? Because we're pushing a lot about, of course, marketing and advertising and other stuff for business, but I feel like we lack more of architects and designers and biologists you mentioned and innovators. Is it something that someone could start learning today from here, from anywhere in the world?
Definitely. So right now, I would say to follow what SpaceX, Boring Company, is publishing. And eventually they're going to announce another round of inviting engineers and business people and everyone to submit their own ideas for how they would imagine a system like this to work. And that's open to the whole world. And so a university environment is great for it because you have a lot of engineers. But even if you are not even if you don't have the scientific side, if you have the business side, you can just compile a team and work on it. As advanced as it is, it's building on the laws of physics. It's building on the learnings that we've had from boats, planes, trains, and cars. So it's so possible. And I think that was like one of the biggest things I've learned.
You
is
convinced me. I'm going to get into it.
Get it.
That's been amazing. And so you see this kind of tech actually being globally adopted and being something that
I
we're
think there's
going
a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of support needed from the government, a lot of support needed from, you know, people and what we value. I think one of the biggest challenges today, again, is the shortened attention span that we face. And also this like get rich quick mentality that we face. Everyone's trying to build the next unicorn company and exit in like a year or two. And we value, in a lot of times these companies, you know, they are helping our world, but they're also hurting our world. And it's tough competing with something that can be so profitable, even if it's not necessarily profitable for people on an individual level. You know, a lot of our time is being capitalized and sold, you know.
So it seems like you're working on things that would make the world better, and you are more into empowering people and not just making money or becoming rich or famous or whatever other New York, Silicon Valley founders might be into. It's like something that's really matters to you, correct?
It does matter.
All right.
And I think as much as it does matter, I mean, it's coming with its challenges because I still have to fit into this world somehow.
Yeah.
So figuring that out.
All right. So what about future? Is there other things you want to work in that might also bring good to the world?
Yes. I think Web3 is exciting. Web3 allows everyone to sort of own a little bit of the internet. And right now, a lot of big companies just own everything. And so there's a lot of promise in the Web3 space. And, you know, giving creators and people ways to support themselves. We're starting to live in a world where it's like we're moving away from the 9 to 5 and people are just living these more independent lifestyles. So I think Web3 is exciting, and I've enjoyed being a part of this space more and more. I think that AI, machine learning, is really exciting. You can actually innovate in those areas to actually combat in the future like global warming, because you can develop technology that like makes processes more efficient, whether that's from the way you optimize a route for logistics, or whether you know, optimize any sort of energy intensive product, well, a data center, it's so on. And I think living in a world that's curated for us is really exciting. I think another realm that's tied to AI and tied to Web3 that I think is really cool is, you know, AR and VR, but specifically like technologies that make us closer to our world. You know, because right now we're like on these phones that sort of take us away from our world. But how can we like add an artificial layer to our day-to-day lives? In a you know, it's tricky territory, because we also I don't want ads beamed into my brain directly.
Pop. All right, in a more natural way or more organic way.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think there's a lot of bad press with technology, but technology is just a tool, and it's a tool that is really powerful. And maybe this tool has been wielded by people who've abused it, but technology is also something so incredibly beautiful. Like the fact that I can, you know, connect with my grandparents from New York and my friends, you know, in Sydney and all around the world, or how much I can learn about myself through the data that I get from my fitness, or, you know.
So we're just at the start of all of this, right? The AI and of course, metaverse, Web3, and blockchain, we're clearly at the start of it, but in the back, are the big companies really advancing AI, or we're really at the start? And when will we see, that's a tricky question, when will we see the first ever AI government, a nation managed by an intelligence?
Well, some would argue that we already, it's AI's world and we're already living in it. Some would say that we are living and viewing the world through the eyes of the machine today.
So we are already living in a fully AI world.
Maybe.
What are the uses? What are specific things that might be good for us, for people? I mean, is that going to improve our health? I mean, you said combating challenges, big challenges, global warming and others. They are like